And it's a very good morning to the Gelding as we get to day 4 of the Flemington race meeting, Gelding, and it's stakes day, and we might not even get any rain.
What a good morning, Professor. Good morning, listeners. Sorry, Professor, I'll just turn the TV down. Fantastic day outside, 22 predicted, a good 4-track at Flemington, rail out 9 metres is probably the only thing that stops it from being a beautiful day. This is the Spring Carnival in Melbourne. 3 Group 1 races, each worth $3 million. Are we in Sydney, Professor?
They're throwing the money around today, Gelding. We've got the Daily Sprint, race 6, the Champions Mile, race 7, and the TAB Champion Stakes, race 8. So there's plenty to see for the punters today.
Look, I always used to say Caulfield Guineas, Derby Day and Golden Slipper Day were the best days racing, Professor, but this has got a chance of absolutely blowing those meetings away.
Well, especially with the horses involved, Gelding.
Does it take Sydney $15 million and $10 million to get fields like this?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah. So, look, Animo could have run races like the Golden Eagle and things like that for $10 million, but, yeah, the biggest racing stable in the world, Godolphin, chose to keep the best horse in Australia in Melbourne for the Cox Plate in this race. Because those other races in Sydney, the pop-ups, don't have the status of the Group 1 races that these races in Melbourne have, Professor.
As you said, Gelding, track's a good 4. The rail's out 9 metres for the entire circuit. Without further ado, give us your 2 best bets for today's Stakes Day.
Oh, well, Professor, you got to have a bit of a giggle. For the listeners out there and all that, the Professor was able to guess my tips pretty easy and stayed out of these races. So, look, as you well know, Professor, once I find a nice horse, I like to stick with it. And I reckon I've got 2 of the nicest horses in Australia, Professor, that have been very good to us and our listeners, and especially the Professor's Parlay. Excuse me, Professor. My first tip will be in the first Group 1 worth $3 million, the Daily Champion Sprint. The Australian sprinter, best international horse, race 6, number 1, Nature Strip, Professor. Hoping during the day we will get better than $2 for it. Up against the new up-and-comer in Giga Kick. Also, you've got Bella Nepotina, which you were on, Professor, the other week and won by 5 lengths easily, eased down. Up against some very good horses, Professor, but it's been good to us, so I'm sticking with Nature Strip. And I just suggest to the listeners we wait a little bit in the day and hopefully get greater than $2, because I think a lot of people will stick with the unbeaten Giga Kick, Professor, that beat it in the richest sprint race in Australia, the Everest. So, but I'm still sticking fat, race 6, number 1, Nature Strip. And we've got to stick with the horse of the year, Professor. Race 8, number 7, Animo. Last 4 starts, all Group 1 wins. Last start won the Cox Plate. Again, hoping to get closer to the race, just on the $2 or over. I think there'll be a lot of money for I'm Thunderstruck, which ran an unlucky second to it in the Cox Plate. So I think there'll be money for that horse. And hopefully, if we wait, the race is 5:10. I'll be waiting till 5 o'clock, hoping for $2, Professor. before I place the bet. So my two are race 6, number 1, into race 8, number 7. And if I can have another sneaky professor, I'm leaving out what I think may develop into a very, very good horse, and one that we will be following very much in the future. And if my two favourite horses weren't running, Professor, it would have been in the tip, and that being race 7, number 9, my Oberon, which won fantastically first up from overseas for Annabelle Neesham at Moonee Valley, Professor. I think Chris Judd may have found his next meal ticket, Professor, with a share in it. But there's another one that's another one for the listeners. And your tips, Professor?
Yes, Gelding. I'm going early, and we can have a discussion now, if you like, about whether I'm going early or not.
Can I, before you, like, just for the listeners, you're going race 1, aren't you, Professor?
Yes, I'm going race 1, Gelding.
Now, explain to me, Professor. Race 1, Cup Day, what time was that?
About 10:45, I think, Gelding, wasn't
it? Okay. Race 1 today on Champions Day?
It's later than that, Gelding.
How much later, Professor?
Almost 2 hours, Gelding.
I could have a granny nap in that time, couldn't I? 2 hours? Is that a granny nap? Or why? Wow. Can you explain now the VRC committee, and you know our love of committees, Professor?
Well, admittedly, Gelding, there's one fewer race than there was on Cup Day, but I would have thought that would have only reined in the time by about an hour. So wouldn't you be starting Cup Day maybe at 11:45? Well,
I would have thought that would have given time for people to go down to the TAB, put their bets on. You know, Cup Day's the busiest days for TABs, Professor.
Well, it never used to start at 10:45, Gelding.
No, it started at 10:40 for many years.
All right, Gelding, how about, race 1, and you knew I'd be having a bet in this, Gelding, because it's the Twitter Trophy.
The Twitter Trophy. You love a Twitter, Professor.
Oh, Elon Musk, he's throwing his money around already.
Yeah. Him and the giraffe on Twitter and yourself, eh? What do you reckon?
That's a pretty good trifecta, Gelding. All right. The Twitter Trophy, it's a benchmark 90 over 1,600 metres. In that race, I'm going for horse 5. Now, it depends on whether you come from Melbourne or Sydney, Gelding. If you come from Sydney, it's Castlereagh Kid. If you come from Melbourne, it's Castlereagh Kid.
It's Castle, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Castlereagh. It's a castle.
What was the movie called?
Well, yeah, The Castle, not The Castle.
The Castle. Dear Professor. Well, we better go with Castlereagh because it is trained in Sydney by Gay Waterhouse and Adrian Bott. And National Rulers, even though he was a Victorian, has now been riding in Sydney for many years. So it seems to be a New South Wales horse, Professor. So I like the Castlereagh Kid. I
did have a debate with John from Sydney about the pronunciation of that word.
How is John from Sydney?
I haven't spoken to him for a little while. Last time I heard from him, he was riding around on his motorcycle.
Right. Normally he pops down for the Spring Carnival.
I haven't heard from him, though.
No. Okay.
All right.
And Castlereagh Kid is a schnitzel, Professor.
Yes, I was about to say that. Everybody wants a schnitzel, Gelding.
Unless they've got a Zusa.
That's right. Coming out of barrier 13, Gelding, it's had 7 starts for 3 wins and 2 placings, so a 43% win rate, a 71% place rate. It's first up after a spell, and in its previous 2 starts after a spell, it's a win and a second. So it's won over the distance. It ran first in the Group 2 Autumn Classic, 6th at the Valley in a Group 2 Alistair Clark, and 9th in the Group 1 ATC Derby. So it's pretty good form, Gelding, and you can get $8.50 this morning.
Oh, Beautiful, Professor.
And $2.60 the place. So with Nashville Willer in the saddle and trained by Gay Waterhouse, I'm thinking that might start punters off very nicely for the day.
Oh, it's a good tip, Professor. A lovely each way tip every chance. And look, the way the track was racing on Thursday, you had to be kind of not far back, kind of on pace, that second to kind of fifth kind of area. Any horse trained by Gay Waterhouse is normally right up there, Professor. Yes. So the pattern of racing should suit the way the track's going.
All right, and my second tip for the day is race 3, the Amanda Elliott, not the John Elliott, the Amanda Elliott.
Yes.
A 3-year-old listers race over 1,400 metres, and in that race, Gelding, I like horse 3, Angry Skies. Hopefully there won't be Angry Skies at Flemington today. Coming out of barrier 13, it's very lightly raced at the moment. Only had 3 starts for 1 win and a placing. So 33% win rate, 67% place rate. Now, its biggest challenge in this race, Gelding, is Sandpaper, the top weight.
Mm-hmm.
It ran second to Sandpaper at its last start. It made up I had a look at the film on it, Gelding. It made up 6 to 7 lengths in the straight, and that might be why there's a change of rider today. I think Blake Shin, who rode it back then, let it get back too far, and I noticed that Lukey Nolan, a jockey that we've had before on our horses, Gelding.
Yes, Professor. Is there a photo in the back there with him on?
Yeah, there could well be, Gelding.
Yes.
Could well be. And look, Sandpaper's carrying 4 kilos extra. So Angry Skies only got beaten by 0.2 of a length. So with 4 kilos extra, Angry Skies might be able to run past it today. As I said, Luke Nolan's in the saddle, trained by Ben and JD Hayes. So the second tip, Gelding, race 3, horse 3, Angry Skies.
Certainly like the combination of Ben and JD Hayes, Professor, and as you said, Luke Nolan. Look, this race, a 3-year-old listed race over 1,400. As we were talking last Saturday, how I like to watch the Carbine Club and follow the place getters of the Carbine Club because they normally develop into good horses. Here we've got a big field of 3-year-olds, all with good form, only with a couple of runs, as you said, Professor. Angry Skies, the win in a second from 3 starts. This is a horse that could be going places, Professor. So I like your tip in this, and round about the $6, or did you shop a bit better, Professor?
I got $6.50 this morning, Gelding.
Oh, you're a good shopper on the punt, Professor. Let me tell you.
$6.50 and $2.60 the place.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm very pleased with those odds, Gelding.
Professor, I like them for our parlays to build up a bit of a bank for a couple of shorties later on. And maybe just a suggestion to our followers and all that. My tips are basing around a parlay type betting today. So whereas yours are good each way be used, Professor.
All right, Gelding, the Professor's parlay.
The very successful Professor's parlay.
2 legs out of 3. Quong Tree let us down on Melbourne Cup Day, Gelding. I'm not sure about
letting us down, Professor. It may have broken down. So,
yes,
I haven't heard any reports about it yet, but it seemed to get pulled out of the race, and finished a long last. So, look.
Yeah, we hope the horses.
The risk, if something happens to it during the running, same as footballers getting injured during the play, Professor. That happens.
Yeah, you can't help that, Gelding. All right, well, today, agreed bet of the day, and I think it was fairly easy for you and I to come to that decision, Gelding. Sometimes we differ in our opinion, but this horse has been very good to the Professor's parlay. Race 8, horse 7, Animo.
Yep.
Currently showing $2. And let's parlay that into the Kansas City Chiefs at home to beat the Tennessee Titans. The Kansas City Chiefs 3rd in the AFC at the moment. 5 wins from 7 starts, a plus 51 point differential. Now, the Tennessee Titans are 2nd in the NFC, Gelding. They've won 5 and lost 2 also. but they've got a -6 points differential. Now, how can you win 5 games and only lose 2, but be -6 on the points
means
difference?
they're a defensive side, Professor, doesn't it?
It does mean it means they've been smashed in 2 games, Gelding, and I think they might be smashing at Kansas too.
And they're up against an elite quarterback
in Patrick Mahomes. Yes.
Yep. Very, very much an elite. Would have to be what? If he's not the best in the league, he's got to be top 2, 3, doesn't he?
Yeah, in the top 2 or 3, Gelding. We can get $1. We can get $1.15 Kansas City Chiefs at home, so we'll take that. And let's parlay that into Manchester City to beat Fulham. Manchester City playing at home, second in the Premier League. 12 games played, 9 wins, 2 draws, only been beaten once. They've got the best goal difference in the Premier League, +26. Fulham, 13 matches for only 5 wins and 4 draws. Promoted from the Championship. I think they might be a bit overawed at Manchester City. Their goal difference is also interesting, Gelding. 5 wins, but the goal difference is 0. So they can be scored against. And when you're playing a team at home who likes scoring, that might be a bit of a problem from Fulham.
Man City picked themselves, Professor, don't they?
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah, they do, Gelding. It's like anime. Manchester City at home picks itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it, Professor. And how have you gone with your shopping on this market?
Well, given that they're all short, Gelding, we've got 5-2, so I'll take that.
My theory, Professor, you're better off having a short winning ticket than having a piece of paper with long odds and said you could have won this.
Exactly, Gelding, exactly. All right, well, tomorrow, Sportsfan Radio returns. Gelding, will you be returning?
Yes, I'm available, Professor.
Excellent.
Subject to whether I can a chance to get a run, am I?
Oh, you'll definitely get a run tomorrow, Gelding.
Oh, beautiful. I'm sure I'm gonna cop a bit of querying from David from Morty Alec and the giraffe, Professor.
No, that couldn't happen, could it?
Oh, mate, if I can get a word in defence of myself, I might be all right. I'm sure David will be very...
We might let you start then.
Yeah, I'm sure David might question me in relation to why my horse didn't start in a $500,000 race on...
well, then the viewers should be watching
on Thursday.
What the answer is to that, Gelding. All right.
I'll try and keep it very clean, Professor.
How will the Tigers go today, Gelding, against Brisbane?
Well, they've actually got form against Brisbane, Professor.
Well, they beat them during the year, Gelding.
They beat them during the year. And they're the only side that has beaten Brisbane this year. So
must have confidence, Gelding.
Well, hoping, and we'll have an eye in the background. We've got the grandkids coming down today, but don't worry, that we'll be watching the Tigerettes with a little bit of interest, Professor. So, look, Brisbane will start favourites, but I'm hoping.
Well, it'll be interesting to hear from Sarah about the big improvement in Richmond from last year.
Well, and I heard a very, very good, and this will be for discussion tomorrow, Professor, and let you, just the gradual improvement with the 18 sides coming in. A lot of doomsayers were saying, the pool was spread too far and wouldn't do it, but some sides are playing good footy in the Women's League at the moment. And, it's getting better, and maybe having the season at the start of this year and the next season at the end of this year, they're getting, the more footy they're playing, the better the skills are becoming, Professor, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Gelding. All right, well, so Sportsfan Radio tomorrow at midday, and until next Saturday.